The Apache woman thought she'd die in that cage, until the rancher called her his wife. She woke up to the sound of wind moving through dry metal. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Her body felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else. When she tried to move, sharp pain spread through her arms and back. That was when she remembered. The cage, the dust, the heat that never left. The cage stood behind an old storage building on the edge of a desert town. It was made of rusted iron bars, bent and uneven as if it had been built in a hurry. The ground beneath it was hard and dry, cracked like broken skin. During the day, the sun burned everything it touched. At night, the cold crept in quietly, wrapping around her bones. There was no comfort, no safety, only time moving slowly, one breath after another. She was Apache, born to the land long before fences and signs claimed ownership. Her grandmother used to tell her stories about strength, about survival, about never bowing her head to injustice. Those stories felt very far away now. Inside the cage, she felt small, reduced to something people stared at but never truly saw. People came to look at her. Some stopped out of curiosity, some out of fear, others just because they had nothing better to do. They stood a few steps away, whispering to each other. Words like dangerous and wild floated through the air. No one asked her name. No one asked how she ended up there. They only saw what they wanted to see. The sheriff had told the town she was being held for everyone's safety. He said she caused trouble, that she refused to follow orders, that she didn't belong. The story spread quickly, changing a little each time it was told. Soon, people believed she deserved the cage. Belief made it easier to walk away. She tried not to cry. Tears felt like a waste of strength. Instead, she counted small things. The number of times the sun crossed the sky, the sound of trucks passing on the road nearby, the way the wind carried the smell of dust and oil. These small details reminded her she was still alive, even if barely. Food came once a day, sometimes twice if the guard remembered. Water was warm and tasted of metal, but she drank it slowly, carefully. She had learned long ago that survival was about patience. Still, every night she wondered if she would wake up again. Her body was tired, but her mind refused to rest. She thought about her family, about her mother's hands, rough from work but gentle when braiding hair. About her father teaching her how to read tracks in the sand, how to listen to the land. Those memories hurt, but they also kept her going. They reminded her she was more than this cage. The town itself seemed to exist in two worlds. In the center there were stores, a diner, a post office. Life went on as usual. People laughed, argued, made plans. On the edge where the cage stood, everything felt forgotten. It was as if the town had pushed its shame as far away as possible, hoping it would disappear. Sometimes children passed by with their parents. The parents pulled them closer, whispering warnings. The children stared with wide eyes, unsure whether to be afraid or curious. She met their gaze calmly, refusing to look away. She wanted them to see her as human, even if they didn't understand. As days turned into nights, her strength faded. Simple movements became difficult. Standing too long made her dizzy. Sitting on the hard ground sent pain through her legs. She leaned against the bars often, feeling their cold surface against her skin. The bars were solid, unyielding, a constant reminder of where she was. There were moments when fear tried to take over completely. In those moments, she focused on her breathing. In, out. Slow and steady. She remembered her grandmother's voice telling her that fear was natural, but it should never be allowed to decide her fate. Holding onto that thought felt like holding onto a thin rope over a deep drop. One afternoon, the heat was unbearable. The air shimmered and even the insects seemed quiet. She lay on her side, eyes half closed, conserving energy. Footsteps approached, heavier than usual. She assumed it was the guard coming late again. She did not look up right away. But the footsteps stopped closer than expected, not at the usual distance. She sensed something different and slowly lifted her head. A man stood there just outside the cage. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and dusty boots. His clothes were simple, worn from work, not from style. He did not hold a weapon. His hands rested calmly at his sides. He did not speak at first. He did not shout or insult her. He simply looked at her, really looked. His eyes moved over the cage, the ground, the small signs of how she had been living. His jaw tightened slightly as if he was holding back words. She met his gaze, prepared for whatever came next. Hope was dangerous, she knew that. Still, something about his presence felt different. He did not look at her like she was a problem to be managed or a threat to be contained. He looked like someone trying to understand. A truck engine roared in the distance, breaking the silence. The man glanced toward the sound, then back at her. "How long?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Speaking took effort and trust did not come easily. "Long enough," she said, her voice rough but steady. He nodded slowly as if that answer confirmed something he already suspected. He stepped closer, stopping just short of the bars. Up close she could see lines on his face, marks left by sun and years of hard work. He looked like someone who spent more time with animals and land than with people. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She gave a small, tired smile. "Everyone," she said. It was not an accusation, just a fact. He exhaled through his nose, anger flickering in his eyes before he controlled it. He looked around, as if expecting someone to appear and challenge him. No one did. The town was busy ignoring this corner of itself. "I'm not from here," he said after a moment. "Got a ranch a few miles out." She nodded slightly. Ranchers came through town often. Most kept their distance from trouble. Most kept their distance from her. "You got a name?" he asked. She told him. Saying it out loud felt strange, like reclaiming something that had almost been taken away. He repeated it once carefully, as if committing it to memory. Then he introduced himself. His voice was calm, but there was something firm beneath it, like solid ground under thin soil. They stood there for a few more moments, neither speaking. The wind picked up again, carrying dust between them. Finally, he stepped back. "I'll be back," he said. She watched him walk away, not sure what to feel. People had said things like that before. Promises were easy. Keeping them was rare. Still, as she lay back down, something had shifted. The air felt slightly less heavy. The cage was still there. The pain was still there. But now there was also the memory of someone who had looked at her and seen more than a story told by others. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, she allowed herself a single thought she had avoided for days. Maybe this was not the end. Maybe, somewhere beyond the dust and rust, change was beginning to move toward her. The next morning came slowly, like it was unsure whether it wanted to arrive at all. The desert sky turned pale and the cool air did not last long. Inside the cage, she sat upright, her back against the bars, waiting. She did not know what she was waiting for, only that something had changed the day before. The stranger's face stayed in her mind, calm but troubled, as if he had seen something he could not ignore. She had learned not to expect anything. Expectation often led to disappointment. Still, she found herself listening more carefully to every sound. Each footstep, each passing engine made her lift her head. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. No one came. By midday, the familiar feeling returned, that quiet ache in her chest that told her not to hope. She closed her eyes and focused on breathing, just as she had done every day before. If the man returned, he returned. If not, she would survive the same way she always had, one moment at a time. In town, the rancher stood near the sheriff's office, his hat pulled low. He had not slept much. The image of the cage had stayed with him through the night. He had seen hard things in his life, injured animals, broken land, people who had lost their way. But this was different. This was a person being treated as if she had no place in the world. He asked simple questions at first. He asked why she was being held. He asked who decided it. The answers came quickly but felt empty. People repeated the same words, the same explanations, like they had practiced them. For safety, until things calmed down. It's complicated. No one could give him a clear reason that made sense. When he asked if there was any official charge, the room grew quiet. The sheriff shifted in his chair and cleared his throat. He said it was a temporary measure. He said the town had to protect itself. He said the woman had no one to speak for her. The rancher noticed that last part. No one to speak for her. It was said like a fact, like it closed the discussion. He left the office with more questions than answers. Outside, people watched him carefully. Word had already spread that he had gone near the cage. In a small town, nothing stayed quiet for long. Some people shook their heads, others avoided his eyes. He walked down the street past the diner and the hardware store, feeling the weight of attention on his back. He was used to being alone. Ranch life taught a person how to stand by themselves, but this felt different. This was not loneliness. This was pressure. Back at the cage, the woman heard footsteps again. This time she looked up immediately. He was there just as he had said. Relief passed through her before she could stop it. She hid it quickly, straightening her posture. "You came back," she said. "I said I would," he replied. He brought water, cooler than what she was used to, and some food wrapped carefully. He passed them through the bars without rushing. He did not act like he was doing her a favor. He acted like this was normal, like this was how things should be. She accepted them with a quiet thank you. Her hands shook slightly, not from weakness alone, but from the effort of staying guarded. Kindness could be confusing. It could make old wounds ache. He asked her more questions, gently this time, where she was from. What had happened before the cage. She answered what she could. Some memories were still too heavy to lift. He did not push when she fell silent. He waited. As she spoke, he listened closely. He did not interrupt. He did not doubt her words. That alone felt strange. For days, people had spoken about her, not to her. Now, someone was listening. She told him how she had been passing through the area, how a disagreement had grown into something much larger, how fear and misunderstanding had taken control. She did not try to make herself sound innocent or perfect. She only told the truth as she knew it. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "That's not justice," he said quietly. Those words landed heavily between them. Justice. It was a word she had almost forgotten. Hearing it spoken aloud felt like a door opening slightly, letting light into a dark room. Later that afternoon, the sheriff returned, paperwork in hand. His tone was firm, his posture defensive. He told the rancher again to stay out of it. He said helping her would only cause trouble. He reminded him that the town had rules. The rancher stood his ground. He asked where those rules were written. He asked why they seemed to change depending on who was involved. The sheriff's patience thinned. Voices rose, though no harsh words were used. People nearby slowed their steps, listening. The woman watched from the cage, her heart pounding. She had seen this before. Someone tries to help. Someone gets warned. Then they leave. She prepared herself for that ending, even as she hoped for something else. The sheriff said one final thing before turning away. "She's not your problem," he said. The rancher did not answer right away. He looked at the woman, really looked at her. He saw the strength she carried despite everything. He saw the quiet dignity she refused to give up. "Maybe that's where you're wrong," he said. That evening he returned again. The sky was darker now, the heat easing slightly. He sat on an old crate near the cage, not too close, not too far. He talked about his ranch, about the animals, about the long days and quiet nights. He spoke like he was filling the silence, not demanding anything from her. She listened, surprised at how comforting it felt. Normal conversation had become a rare thing. It reminded her that life still existed beyond this place. "People around here don't like change," he said at one point. "They don't like being questioned." She smiled faintly. "Neither do cages," she said. He chuckled softly, then grew serious again. "I won't lie to you," he said. "Helping you won't be easy." "I know," she replied. They sat quietly after that, listening to the sounds of night. When he finally stood to leave, she felt a familiar fear rise again. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked before she could stop herself. He turned, meeting her eyes. "Yes," he said, "I will." That night she slept more deeply than she had in days. The cage was still there. The danger was still real. But now there was someone outside it who refused to look away. And sometimes that was where change truly began. Morning came with an uneasy stillness, the kind that made the air feel tight, as if something important was about to happen. The woman woke early, sitting upright in the cage before the sun fully rose. She had slept, but her mind was already racing. The rancher's words from the night before stayed with her. Helping would not be easy. She believed that. Nothing in her life ever had been. As the town began to stir, she noticed more movement than usual. A truck slowed near the storage building. Two men stood nearby longer than necessary, pretending to talk while watching her from the corner of their eyes. Whispers traveled faster than footsteps in a small place like this. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the feeling of being watched. Fear tried to rise again, but she pushed it down. She had survived worse than stares. Still, something felt different today, heavier, sharper. Around mid-morning, the rancher arrived. This time, he did not come alone. A man from the county office walked beside him, holding a folder. The sheriff followed a few steps behind, his face tight with irritation. The woman's heart began to pound. She stood slowly, steadying herself against the bars. Her legs felt weak, but she refused to sit back down. Whatever was coming, she would face it standing. The group stopped in front of the cage. The county man cleared his throat and began speaking in a formal tone, using careful words. He talked about responsibility, about order, about concerns raised by the town. He said there had been complaints. He said things needed to be resolved properly. The woman listened, but the words blurred together. She watched the rancher instead. He stood straight, calm, his hands relaxed at his sides. He looked like a man who had made a decision and was ready to stand by it. The sheriff interrupted, pointing toward the cage. "She can't just walk free," he said. "People are uneasy. There has to be a process." "What process?" the rancher asked. His voice was steady, not loud. "There's no charge, no hearing, no clear reason she's here." The sheriff frowned. "It's for safety." "Whose safety?" the rancher asked. Silence followed, the kind that made everyone uncomfortable. The county man shifted his weight. "If someone is willing to take responsibility for her," he said carefully, "that could change things." The woman's breath caught. Responsibility. The word felt heavy, uncertain. The sheriff looked sharply at the rancher. "You don't want this," he warned. "Once you step in, there's no stepping back." The rancher did not look away. "I've already stepped in," he said. Then, without raising his voice, without drama, he said the words that stopped everything. "She's my wife." The world seemed to freeze. Even the wind felt like it paused. The county man blinked, clearly surprised. The sheriff stared, disbelief written across his face. A couple of people nearby gasped softly. The woman felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Her mind struggled to understand what she had just heard. Wife. The word echoed inside her, loud and unreal. She looked at the rancher, searching his face for any sign of uncertainty or apology. There was none, only calm resolve. The sheriff laughed once, sharp and short. "That's not funny," he said. "I'm not joking," the rancher replied. The county man flipped through his folder, confused. "There's no record." "There wouldn't be," the rancher said. "We didn't marry here." The woman's heart raced. Fear mixed with shock, with something else she did not want to name. She did not speak. She trusted him to lead this moment. If she interrupted, it could all fall apart. The sheriff took a step closer. "You expect us to believe this?" The rancher met his gaze. "I expect you to follow the law. A spouse can't be held like this without cause." The word spouse hung in the air. It changed everything. Not because it erased what had happened, but because it forced people to see her differently. not as a problem, not as a rumor, but as someone connected to a man they knew, someone suddenly protected by a line they hesitated to cross. The county man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If that's true," he said, "then this situation needs to be reviewed immediately." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. Delay, questions, attention, things he had hoped to avoid. Reluctantly, he pulled out a set of keys. The sound of metal against metal echoed loudly as he unlocked the cage. Every click felt unreal. The door creaked open slowly, like it hadn't been moved in a long time. The woman did not move at first. Freedom felt dangerous. She had learned that sometimes the moment you believed you were safe was when everything collapsed. The rancher stepped closer, stopping just outside the open door. He did not rush her. He held out his hand, not reaching in, just offering it. "It's okay," he said quietly. She took a step forward. Her legs trembled, but they held. Then another step, and another. When she finally crossed the line where the cage ended and open ground began, she felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away, lifting her chin. People watched in silence as she stood beside him, no longer behind bars. The sheriff said nothing as they walked away. His silence followed them like a shadow. They did not speak until they reached the rancher's truck. He opened the passenger door for her. She hesitated again, then climbed inside. The seat felt strange, soft, real. As he drove out of town, she stared out the window, watching buildings and roads pass by. Everything looked the same, yet completely different. After a long stretch of silence, she finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he said. "I did." She turned to look at him. "Why?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Because what they were doing was wrong, and because sometimes the only way to break something unfair is to stand inside it and say no." She absorbed his words slowly. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we make sure you're safe. After that, we deal with the rest." When they reached the ranch, the land opened wide around them. Fences stretched across the earth and animals grazed peacefully. The house was simple but solid, built with care. He showed her a room where she could rest. Clean clothes waited on the bed, water for washing, space, respect. Before leaving her alone, he paused at the door. "I know today was a lot," he said. "You don't owe me anything, not words, not trust, not answers." She nodded, emotion thick in her throat. "Thank you," she said quietly. When the door closed, she sat on the bed, letting the silence settle around her. The cage felt far away, but its memory still lived inside her. Healing would take time. Outside, the rancher stood on the porch, looking out at his land. He knew the town would not forget what he had done. Trouble would come. Questions would follow. But for the first time since he saw that cage, he felt something close to peace. Because today, someone who had been forgotten walked free. The first night at the ranch was quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. The woman lay awake in the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds she had nearly forgotten. The soft creak of wood as the house settled. The distant call of an animal far away. The gentle movement of air through an open window. There were no metal bars, no shouting voices, no footsteps stopping just out of reach. Still, sleep did not come easily. Her body rested, but her mind stayed alert. Every small sound made her tense. She had learned to be careful. Freedom was new, and new things felt unsafe until proven otherwise. She sat up and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, breathing slowly, reminding herself where she was. Across the house, the rancher sat at the small kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. He had not gone to bed either. He knew nights were often the hardest for people who had been held too long. Silence could be louder than noise. He did not go to her room. He did not knock or check on her. He trusted her space just as he had promised. Respect, he believed, was not shown through words but through restraint. Morning arrived with soft light spilling across the land. When she finally slept, it was deep and heavy, as if her body was catching up on lost time. She woke late, startled for a moment, then slowly remembered. The ranch, the house, the open door. She stood and walked carefully, half expecting the world to change again if she moved too quickly. The floor felt solid beneath her feet. She washed her face, studying her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired, thinner than she remembered, but her eyes were still strong. Still hers. The smell of food drifted from the kitchen. Simple, warm, real. She followed it, her steps quiet. The rancher stood at the stove, moving with ease. He turned when he heard her and gave a small nod. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. He set a plate on the table and stepped back, giving her space. They ate in comfortable silence at first. No pressure, no questions. After breakfast, he showed her the land, the animals, the work that needed to be done each day. He did not assign her tasks or expect anything. He only explained, letting her decide where she wanted to help, if at all. She found herself drawn to the animals. They did not judge. They did not ask questions. They responded to calm hands and steady voices. Caring for them felt natural, grounding. It reminded her of home. Days passed slowly, each one building on the last. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, morning chores, midday rest when the heat grew strong, evenings filled with long shadows and quiet skies. The rancher never used the word wife again in private. It had served its purpose in town. Here he treated her as a guest, then as a partner in daily life, never crossing lines she did not invite him to cross. Trust grew in small ways, through shared work, through quiet talks on the porch, through the simple fact that he always did what he said he would do. But the town did not forget. Rumors reached the ranch through passing travelers and delivery drivers. People were unhappy. Some felt embarrassed. Others felt challenged. A few felt angry. The idea that one man could disrupt what had been accepted for so long made them uncomfortable. One afternoon, a truck slowed near the ranch gate. Two men stood watching from inside before driving away without stopping. Another day, a warning was left at the edge of the property, subtle but clear. The rancher noticed everything. He did not mention it to her at first. He did not want fear to take root where healing was still fragile, but she noticed too. She had lived long enough with danger to recognize its shape. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she spoke. "They're not done," she said quietly. He nodded. "No, they're not." "Are you afraid?" she asked. He considered the question carefully. "I respect what fear can do," he said, "but I won't let it decide my actions." She absorbed that. Strength did not always roar. Sometimes it spoke softly and stayed steady. That night, noise broke the quiet, not close enough to be an attack, but close enough to be a message. She woke with her heart racing, old instincts rushing back. Before panic could settle, there was a knock on her door, gentle, controlled. "It's okay," the rancher said from the other side. "You're safe." She opened the door. He stood a few steps back, hands visible, posture calm. That mattered more than words. They stood together on the porch, watching the darkness. No one appeared. The land remained still. "They want to scare us," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "But we're still here," she added. He smiled slightly. "Yes, we are." In the days that followed, she began to speak more about her past. Not all at once. Not in detail, just pieces, moments, feelings. He listened without interruption, without judgment. She learned more about him too, about his family. About why he chose a quiet life far from crowds. About the losses that had shaped him. Two people, both shaped by hardship, finding steady ground in shared honesty. One evening, as they worked side by side fixing a fence, she paused. "You risked a lot," she said. "For someone you barely knew." He tightened a wire, then looked at her. "I knew enough," he said. "What if it costs you everything?" she asked. "Then it costs me everything," he replied simply. "Some things are worth that." She felt emotion rise, strong and unexpected. She turned away, focusing on her work, giving herself time to breathe. As night fell, they sat outside, watching the stars appear one by one. The sky felt wide, endless. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a future, not a perfect one, not an easy one, but one where she was not alone, not caged, not silent. And somewhere beyond the dark, trouble was gathering, but so was strength. The trouble did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, like a storm forming far away before anyone noticed the clouds. The woman felt it in small changes. Deliveries stopped coming on time. People who used to wave from the road now looked straight ahead. Once, she found fresh tire tracks near the fence where no one had business being. She did not panic. Fear no longer controlled her the way it once had. Instead, she paid attention. She had learned that survival was not only about strength but about awareness. The rancher noticed too. One evening he sat at the table with papers spread in front of him. Old records, notes, letters he had requested from the county office. He had been asking questions quietly, carefully, not to cause noise but to find the truth. She joined him, sitting across the table. "You don't have to do all this," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." They worked together in silence. He explained what he found, dates that did not match, statements that changed depending on who told the story, decisions made without proper process. It became clear that what happened to her was not a mistake. It was convenience. Easier to lock someone away than to listen. The next day, someone from the county arrived unannounced. This time, it was not a warning. It was a request. There would be a review, a formal one. Statements would be taken, questions asked. The woman felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the past knocking again. "You don't have to go," the rancher said, "not if you're not ready." She thought about the cage, about the silence, about how close she came to being erased. "I am ready," she said. The meeting was held in a plain room with white walls and too many chairs. People sat on one side. She and the rancher sat on the other. Faces she recognized stared back at her. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked defensive. A few looked ashamed. When it was her turn to speak, she stood. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. She spoke slowly, clearly, choosing simple words. She did not shout. She did not accuse. She told the truth. She spoke about being taken without explanation, about being held without charge, about how it felt to be watched and ignored at the same time. She spoke about the fear, the pain, the loneliness. As she spoke, something changed in the room. People shifted in their seats. Eyes dropped. The story they had told themselves no longer fit the person standing in front of them. When she finished, there was silence, long and heavy. Then the rancher stood. He did not speak about anger. He spoke about responsibility, about how power should never be used to make people disappear, about how easy it was to look away and how dangerous that choice could be. The review did not end everything. It did not erase the past, but it did something important. It named what happened as wrong. Changes followed, quiet ones. Procedures were questioned, decisions were reviewed. The cage was removed, not repaired, not moved, taken apart. The woman returned to the ranch feeling lighter though tired. Speaking had cost her energy, but it had also given something back. Her voice no longer felt trapped inside her. Life did not suddenly become perfect. Healing rarely worked that way. Some nights were still hard. Some memories still rose without warning, but she no longer faced them alone. One evening, as the sun set low, she and the rancher stood by the fence, watching the land glow gold. "I don't know what comes next," she said. "That's okay," he replied. "Neither do I," she smiled. Not because everything was solved, but because uncertainty no longer felt like a threat. In time, she began to make choices for herself. She wrote letters. She reconnected with people she had been forced to leave behind. She helped at the ranch, then beyond it. She spoke to others who felt unseen. She was no longer defined by what had been done to her. She was defined by what she chose to become. One morning, she packed a small bag. The rancher watched quietly. "I need to go," she said. "Not away forever, just forward." He nodded. "You'll always have a place here." She hugged him then. A simple, honest embrace. Not a promise, not a label, just gratitude. As she walked toward the road, she did not look back at the cage. It no longer held her story. She walked into the open, carrying her past, but no longer bound by it.